Hello there, Shortcuts. This is Stephen here with video 1 for the Shortcuts price list that will go out this Wednesday, June 4th, 9 p.m. Sydney time. If you are new to this list and would like to purchase some of the records that are on the list tonight, then drop me an email, shortcutsrecords@gmail.com. Okay, this is a pretty diverse list, but before I go into that, I just want to say we have about 350 people who've already expressed interest in attending the latest Northern Beaches Record Fair, which will happen June 29th, Sunday, June 29th, 11 a.m. at the Hotel Stain, with those who come in the first couple of hours getting entered into some free prize draws. So, look, I think this is way more popular than the first record fair, and I've completely refreshed the people who are bringing the people who are bringing records. It's a completely new list. So if you'd like to know more about the record fair, drop me an email, shortcutsrecords@gmail.com. So this list is an example of some of the things that I'm going to be bringing to the fair that are a little bit different to maybe what would typically be on shortcuts lists. So I have some real obscurities, some first presses, some psych rock, some late 80s power pop classics. I've got some British pub rock. I've got all sorts here. I'd be very surprised if you all know all of these records, but hopefully there will be something interesting here for everyone. I wasn't sure where to start. I'm going to have to start with this one. This is Morrissey's Education in Reverse. Now, many of you will know this album from what it was called around the world, which was Viva Hate. And so this was Morrissey's first solo album after the dramatic split with the Smiths in 1987. I've had so many requests for Smith's vinyl. I will deal with why that is hard another time, but suffice to say, Smith's vinyl is hard to come by. This record is incredibly hard to come by. It's got the unique name. It's got that beautiful sepia-toned image of Stephen Morrissey, and it's got the track The Ordinary Boys, which was removed from subsequent presses all around the world for complicated reasons. But in this Australian first press, it is still there. This record clearly was a reinvention for Morrissey. A completely new guitar player. And the guitar player was a guy called Vini Riley, who was in Duritty Column, another kind of 80s cult British band. And the sound was quite different. It was much more lush, kind of cinematic, as opposed to the twisty, shimmery guitar sound of Johnny Marr and the Smiths. And it had some massive hits, bigger hits than many Smiths songs. Suedehead got to number 5 in the UK. I also remember looking down that Every Day Is Like Sunday. That was a hit. Completely massive hit. The album was really critically acclaimed. I remember buying it on CD because the NME had it in its top 10 albums of the year in 1988. And I always loved it. I think obviously Morrissey's reputation is complicated, and he is a complicated human being, and there are many things that may be inexcusable about what he does. But the sharp lyrics, the emotional depth of some of these songs, I think it's as good as anything the Smiths did. A lot of his subsequent records I don't think are as good as what the Smiths did. But he's a singular voice. This, I think, arguably is his best album. Morrissey, Viva Hate / Education in Reverse. I think Education in Reverse is a better name. Anyway, for those of you who are big Morrissey fans, let me know what you think of that. Okay, I did say this list is going to be a little bit different to the types of things that I was doing. I have done, but that's fine. You guys are interested in these types of things. What about this? This is the mono US first press of Circus Maximus's self-titled debut album from 1960. Let me get the detail. 1967. And this is its follow-up, Neverland Revisited from 1988. Now, these are both on the grey Vanguard label, original UK presses, in fantastic condition. Part of the collection I bought from Bangkok. It is a spectacular collection. There will be more of these in the crates at the fair. Now, Circus Maximus, a short-lived, psychedelic kind of rock/folk band from New York, and two key members, Rob Bruno and Jerry Jeff Walker, who both went into very different directions. Bruno into more kind of jazz fusion, and Jeff Walker into kind of troubadour singer-songwriting stuff. And you can hear that juxtaposition all the way through these records. This one is more kind of fuzz rock, and this one is more psych rock and psychedelia. That's the back. You can kind of get a sense of them. Again, just wonderful, wonderful condition. One of the things that's famous about Jerry Jeff Walker is that he went on to write the little-known ditty Mr. Bojangles. And so this is an interesting kind of starting point. Particularly Neverland Revisited, I hear Procol Harum, that type of a little bit of Love's Forever changes. Never really traveled outside the US, but over the decades they've definitely developed a cult following and are well worth checking out. And these presses are absolutely spectacular. Circus Maximus, trippy US psych rock out of New York, not even the West Coast. Again, as I said, this list is going to be a little bit different. And you know what? This next record is from the same collection out of Thailand. This time it's a record called Ace of Sunlight by a band called Bronco. It is let me just double check. It is a UK first press from 1971 in truly immaculate condition. You would not believe how incredible the records from this collection were. Just stunning. And this is the true UK first press with the pink rim around the Island Records logo. You know, I've played this record a couple of times. I may well be the first person to have played this record. It's that clean and pristine and beautiful. Now, Bronco were kind of the first wave of British country rock. The lead guy is a guy called Jess Roden. They were never a particularly popular, never a chart-topping group, but really influential. And this was their second album. The group itself didn't have a good run. There's some pretty sad, sometimes tragic events, lots of lineup changes, and they never, Jess Roden had a respectable solo career in the 70s, but Bronco never really exploded. But the harmonies, the slide guitar, the kind of country UK version of country soul, it's not a million miles away from Little Feat or the band, if you like that type of vibe. The opening track, Amber Moon, will kind of showcases everything that's really interesting about this band. Now, whilst there is some kind of pastoral sections, there are some really kind of gritty, fuzzy sections as well. They're really, really enjoyable. It's very, very rare. I've never seen a record in such condition. I mean, these things, honestly, they're absolutely spectacular. If you have an interest in early 70s UK psych, pop, etc. This collection that I have is just mind-blowing. Okay, now this next selection is an Aussie press of a band that really kind of exploded into the British blues rock, progressive rock scene and had a number of records over the years, some of which have become really popular with Shortcuts listeners, particularly Spooky Tooth 2. This is You Broke My Heart, so I busted your jaw by Spooky Tooth. This is the Aussie first press. Look at that back sleeve, absolutely spectacular. The band featured Mick Jones, who went on to play with Foreigner, and they had kind of, I guess, some semblance of success. This record came after a 3-year hiatus with songs like Cotton Growing Man. You get the heavy blues riffs and the great vocals. But this record was a little bit cleaner in production, not quite as fuzzy, more heavy as opposed to fuzzy. And so more kind of deep as opposed to that fuzz sheen, groove based, really soulful. I have a couple of copies of it already, and much as this is a great copy, I just thought there might be someone out there that might love Spooky Tooth as much as I do. Okay, this time round, we're going to move into the 2000s. And this is a 2022 repress of a really cool record from 2001. When I was in university, came through university, and in the first 4 or 5 years of my career working in Dublin and London, I really got into this band called Smog. And I've been to see Bill Callahan, the lead singer of Smog, a few times, who subsequently had a really interesting kind of indie career. You've got this literate songwriter with this incredibly distinctive baritone voice. This was the 9th studio album by Smog. It's called Rain on Lens. And that's the inner. It's really stripped back, cinematic folk. I know that a couple of you have had a listen to it as well. It's very emotionally heavy, though. It's typically sparse, very deliberate. It got amazing reviews at the time. I remember in particular the review from Pitchfork. I think, back when Pitchfork was somewhat influential. I think of this record as kind of a quiet classic of kind of 2000s psychedelic folk, and it's really interesting. Obviously, there are some of you out there who love this record label. I'm just going to call it out. This is Drag City, and that kind of scene was really popular in the US, and so yeah, really interesting record. I hope that there's some Smog Bill Callahan fans out there, in the same way that I hope there are some Nick Lowe fans. What I've got here is an absolute treat. I'm just going to try and get it out from the same collection out of Thailand. You can see a little note there. I'm just going to read it. It says, Gatefold Blues Rock, Classic Rock, 1970 UK first press on the Liberty label. This is Brinsley Schwartz, Get It Despite It All, 1970 UK first press. Brinsley Schwartz were really the progenitor of that kind of UK pub rock scene, kind of getting away from glam and favouring more down-to-earth songwriting, kind of just really heavy quality musicianship. I remember reading an article of the PR stunt that followed the first Brinsley Schwartz. I think it was the self-titled album, and they flew a bunch of journalists to New York, and the whole thing was a bit of a disaster. But afterwards, they set about recording a series of really finely crafted, quietly brilliant records, of which despite it all, I think is probably the highlight. It's their second album. It's the one that really kind of was the biggest step forward, kind of warm, confident, rich record. Sounds amazing on vinyl as well. You will hear Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. You will hear Graham Parsons. You will hear the Byrds, but through a uniquely British lens. I mean, Nick Lowe has had a wonderful career and is still somewhat underrated, as is Brinsley Schwartz. But this is great. And where in Australia are you going to find a UK first press in that type of condition? Absolutely wonderful. Those, by the way, the inside of that gatefold is in pristine condition. It has all the lyrics. Oh, give them a listen. They're just great. They're really cool. From a really wonderful UK band, I'm going to talk about a really wonderful American band, the Allman Brothers. Now, I'm just going to show you this. This is from the collection I bought last year from the BBC Reference Library. So this is from the Gramophone Library of BBC. You can see it's on the Atco label. And if you look really closely right there, you'll see a stamp and it says BBC Gramophone Library. Now, this is the UK first press, but it actually uses US stampers on the original blue kind of, I don't know what that shade of blue is, and gold Atco label. This is the Allman Brothers' second record, really the one that cemented their legacy. It is still such a catastrophe that Duane Allman would be dead probably a year later. But in 1969, these guys were the pioneer of true Southern rock that blended blues and jazz and some improvisational jamming together. Probably the most famous example of that improvisational jamming is In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, which appears in this record and would be extended into half-hour kind of marathons in live shows. But this album also features Midnight Rider, which I think is up there with the best that the Allman Brothers ever did. I really like Revival, the opening track as well, and their cover of Hoochie Coochie Man. Idlewild South is more lean and more... lean means such a cliche, but it's more direct than the live albums, and it has a lot going for it. I was reading up on some blogs where people were stack ranking Allman Brothers. It's surprising the number of people who really like this one. I think it's I don't know. It leads, of course, to Fillmore East. You can hear the progression, but I don't know, those early analog Allman Brothers records, they're so warm and deep and joyful and mournful at the same time. I love them very, very much. The interesting fact that I learned about this in doing my research, the original title of this album was going to be Things You Used to Do, after a Greg Allman track that then didn't make the playlist or the final cut, and the Idlewild South name was a last minute change inspired by their chaotic Georgian crash pad, itself named after New York's former airport. How weird. Idlewild South. Okay, I will shoot through these last few because they're kind of interesting too. Zeitgeist by the Levelers, the UK first press, their only number one album in the UK. One of those bands that made it to number one based on word of mouth. Melodic, defiant, bold. Just a proper cult band that for one shining moment were just the thing. I remember people talking about them, number one. How could the Levelers be number one? I always thought that kind of graffiti style sleeve was kind of interesting. Just the One was the hit. I remember that being played on the radio every night when I was studying. It's quite a cool record. Personally though, I think this one's even cooler. This is US press of Nazz 3. Nazz, Nazz, the first band featuring Mr. Todd Rundgren, Philadelphia-based, pure psychedelic garage rock. They only ever made 2 albums and then disbanded. And by this point, Todd Rundgren was already on his path, and the record label kind of pulled together some singles and some bits and pieces, alternate takes, some unreleased stuff, and put out Nazz 3. I believe controversially so. I don't think the band really wanted them to do that. But I think it's still an interesting view into their, I guess, their final moments. Not quite as raucous, I think, as Nazz 1. A little bit more, more like Nazz 2. So more ambitious harmonies. Todd Rundgren was an absolute genius when it came to harmonies. I think it's for those of you who are Todd Rundgren fans, Nazz 3 is really, really fun. This one, I'm pretty sure this is on Rhino Records. Let's just double check. Again, as of all my records, in fantastic condition. There you go. The early Rhino yellow label. There you go. Nazz 3. Okay, what have I got left? I've got a few interesting ones to go. I know there's a few of you out there, and I thought this was interesting. This is an early Status Quo compilation. Golden Hour presents Status Quo, Down the Dust Pipe. This is a UK first press from 1975. Down the Dust Pipe, Lackey Lady, Spinning Wheel Blues. This is kind of, if you know the song Down the Dust Pipe, they'll give you a sense of how this compilation feels. This is much more kind of garagey and raw, very infectious, kind of riff-driven stuff. And that's what they were famous for at the time. Anyway, really kind of cool little compilation of the Quo. Who says that we're stuffy on shortcuts? All right, now I've got a German first press, but this also came from the BBC's reference library of a band from Canada. This is Headpins. They emerged from kind of Vancouver's hard rock scene in the early 80s. And what's notable about this record, when I played it, I think I played it about a month ago, and I haven't played it since, is that just the really cool vocals on this thing. I think that Canadian rock has a very distinct sound, punchy, guitar-driven, big melodic choruses, really kind of commanding vocals, really interesting group. Headpins, and again, this is on the Atco label, as all of the collection that I got from the BBC was in absolutely pristine condition. So the BBC must have ended up getting a German press, which became their reference press, which is, I don't know how these things worked. Very cool. And then I am finally finishing with a late 80s little ditty from Elton John, Sleeping with the Past. Healing Hands, I remember that being the hit, one of the hits. But I remember the number one record, Sacrifice. Man, I don't know how long that was at number one. But this is the Aussie first press of Sleeping with the Past. Any of you are Elton John fans, then you'll be well aware of this record. So let's have a look. Let's do a recap of what is on this list. We have Elton, we have Headpins, Status Quo, Todd Rundgren's classic, Nazz 3, we have The Levelers, Allman Brothers, Brinsley, Schwartz, Smog, we've got Spooky Tooth, we've got Bronco, Circus Maximus, and then finally all the way back to Mr. Morrissey. For those of you who would like to be on the price list for that lot, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Over and out. please leave a comment, like, and all that kind of stuff. It actually makes a difference. Thanks.